We are live here with the Crypto Show, and we got a great show for you. We just watched the 2018 World Economic Forum where they had a discussion on if the crypto asset is a bubble or not. And today we are going to discuss that. We have some great information for you in the video to follow our discussion, but I'm going to bring in Drew with Sprouts Investment to talk a little bit about if crypto is a bubble, if if cryptos are an asset or if they're more of a currency, and a couple of the other things they talk about here in the World Forum. So thank you, Drew, for being a part of the show.
Yeah, no problem. I really enjoy doing this. Okay, so today,
Fantastic.
You want me to speak on it right now?
Yeah, let's dive right in. We'll jump right into the first question here. What do you think? Is Bitcoin, do you see it as more of an asset? Do you see it as more of a currency? What are your thoughts?
So one of the things that people don't understand is that if you look at the global market, Bitcoin and blockchain technologies are currently holding about 0.001% of the global market, and most of these to hit around 5% to 12% of the global market, meaning that right now it does not function as a currency. It's functioning as an asset, a way to store value and increase that value. Once we hit a threshold where that money, there's enough money in there till it levels out and it becomes a consistent price, then you're going to see it turn into much more of a currency.
Yeah, no, I agree. And a lot of people are calling it, gold 2.0, digital gold. And a lot of people are comparing it to more on that, aspect of things as put USD dollars, put fiat currency into Bitcoin. And then, that's kind of where you're storing your value, as opposed to, obviously I'm not going to go to the grocery store and buy, milk with Bitcoin right now, at least, at this current moment. So, I agree. It does look more like it's more a place to store your fiat dollars as an asset.
Most definitely. But I do believe within probably the next 3 weeks to 6 weeks that the Lightning Network will be going live, and a lot of the higher end businesses will start accepting Bitcoin because you'll be able to have channels of payment between large organizations, and you're going to see it used as a currency, but not for everyday, like buying a milk. It'll be for buying real estate, apartment buildings, things along those lines, much larger investments.
Now, do you think when that happens, they're going to be using Bitcoin, or are they going to use Litecoin, or are they going to use some other form of crypto for the speed asset, or what do you think?
So that one is really unpredictable. This market is brand new. As you can see, it's had massive growth over just the last year or two. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and nobody knows where it's going to go. But there's a lot of strength in the Bitcoin network. They have a very large community of very skilled developers.
Yeah. So let's switch gear here. As an asset, you look at Bitcoin, me personally, you put your paychecks, your dollar bills, you get direct deposited into a bank account, your $500 turns into, well, $500, right? Because it's in my checking. I get no, value, I guess, increase in putting into my Chase or my Huntington or whatever the case is. But when you put, your fiat into something like Bitcoin, it can go up, it can go down. So as an asset, do you think Bitcoin is a solid place to put your fiat dollars? Should it be in a 401k over cryptos and Bitcoin stock market? What do you think of Bitcoin as an asset in that sense?
I think in a diversified portfolio, if you are an investor, if you are planning for the future and you
All right, real quick, looks like we have some technical difficulties. We lost Drew as we tried to get him back into the call. Great talks here. Me personally, I like having my money in cryptos and Bitcoin and the digital assets better than the stock market. Yes, there's a lot of volatility, but with that volatility comes a lot of growth. So let's see here. Let me just work through these issues as we try to get Drew back on the call. But I know if anybody has put, $100 or $1,000 into Bitcoin or earlier this year, that you've already seen incremental growth in, call it your Coinbase account or wherever you have your Bitcoins. So instead of holding that money in a bank account, you can hold it in crypto and that money increases. So that's one of the things I like about digital currency. As we've said, you're not going to use Bitcoin to buy milk or use it as, a daily currency as you do kind of US dollar or, other fiats. But we are at the beginning stages of digital. So when things go on and you start implementing more things that work like Apple Pay with cryptocurrencies and all of these other things, it's going to be very interesting to see where it goes. So I know we're still trying to get Drew back on the call here. So just give us a quick second. I've been adding them. All right, so nonetheless, is Bitcoin an asset or a currency? As we've said, it's more of an asset right now. As time goes on, I believe it'll work more like a currency, whether it's going to be something that pulls all of your crypto portfolios and turns it into, US or fiat dollars so that you can buy regular goods, or if you just use it as an asset base, more kind of like a stock market or an investment, that route. So let's see. Gotta love Google Hangout. Shout out to Google Hangout for trolling us right now and not allowing us to make this thing happen. It looks like we do got Drew back in the call, so Google, you're off the hook for now. But if this happens again, I'm about to put a support ticket in because you guys got way too much money to have your stuff trolling us like this. So, Drew, welcome back to the crypto show here. We were talking about if Bitcoin is an asset or a currency. I know we're probably going to have to move on to the next topic here, but what are some of your thoughts here? Kind of tap us out on, Bitcoin asset or a currency. Leave us with something.
All right. So currently today, the way Bitcoin is functioning, it is not a currency. But within the next year, I think they're going to solve a lot of the scalability issues to where people will be able to start using it as a currency.
Yeah. I want to be the person that creates the app that functions and connects with your portfolio, your crypto portfolio that works like Apple Pay. So I go in the subway and I got my XLM sellers or my Litecoin in there, and boom, I just pay for my subway right from my cell phone. I know I've told you about this app, and I'm sure people are already creating this, and it seems like there are a couple things out there that are starting to work like this. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Moving on to topic 2. In the World Economic Forum, one of the things they talk about is central banks and how central banks are going to play down the road in the future with digital currency, with cryptos and Bitcoin. And one of the topics they asked was, do people trust the central bank? Are people excited about leaving their money with the bank? Well, I mean, what do you think? Do people trust the bank? Do they want to leave their money with the banks? What do people want to do with their money?
So I don't have any statistics here, no graphs or surveys. This is just my opinion right now. When I look around and I talk to people about Bitcoin and crypto and banking in general, the consensus that I am getting is that people are losing trust in governments and in central banks, and they don't think that they can trust them to manage their value. They know 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, they're not really looking out for us. They're looking out for themselves.
Yeah. And the one thing that really kind of, burns a fire in my ass, we'll call it, is you put your money into a bank and you check in, you got your digital dollars there, you got your ones and zeros in your bank account. Those fiat dollars aren't really in your bank. They're in the market. Chases or whoever's taking your money, they're putting it into the stock market, and then they're using your money to increase their value as a company.
Yeah.
right? So now my, $500 paycheck is going to make Chase CEO more money or however, or, whoever's getting paid from this. When in turn, as I've said kind of just earlier in this show, if I take that same 500 and I put it into Bitcoin, well, now my 500 turns into 1,000, whatever it turns into. And I'm, the bank's not making the money, I'm making the money,
Yep.
right? So right there, I mean, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts? I mean, that's right. I don't trust the banks right there because of that. You're making money off of me and you're not giving me anything in return.
Well, any business has to make profit to succeed, right? But the focus of that business should be their clients and making the products for their client the best. They shouldn't be taking massive profits. They should be taking a little bit and then using all of those profits to go back into the company to make better products for their customers. And their customers right now are high-end investors, not people like me and you that have a job, that go out and work, and that get paid. They want people that have billions of dollars, and that is their clientele. They don't really care about what we're doing down here. And Bitcoin is a big eye opener to them, and they're realizing that it's time to start listening to the people.
Yeah. And that's what I love. One of the things I love most about cryptocurrency is it's kind of, addressing that issue where, hey, banks, we have a different place to put our money where you don't control the value. Third world countries, governments deflate value all the time. And, a lot of third world countries. And up until now, until digital currency, the people that live there really have, well, what could they do? They have their fiat dollars. They're being deflated. Now, call it the US, $100 can buy me nothing but milk. And there's nothing you can do about it. Where you have your money in a digital crypto or Bitcoin, and you're not subjected to those deflation, things here. All right, Google, here's the next shout out because you're trolling us here again. But again, that's the one thing, you talk about, do people trust central banks? Me personally, we just got out of a financial crash because of the central banks. I mean, if you remember, I believe 2008, the banks were asking the government to bail them out so that we could get the financials and the economy back up and running here in the United States. So there's been multiple times where central banks have already failed us. And me personally, I like to be able, and welcome back, Drew. By the way, welcome back. I like to be able to have my money in Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever, where I control it. I'm not worried about it. And plus, dude, I feel like even if I got $500 on my checking, you take that 500 and you make some money in the stock market, you should at least throw me 10 cents or something, a dollar. I should get 501 next week or something, right? So you're playing me.
I would say the dollar is not going anywhere. It's still going to be around in 10 years. It's just the way that I look at it. If I have one Bitcoin right now, or if I have $1 in 10 years from now, I believe that Bitcoin will be much more valuable than that dollar. Meaning, if I store this dollar in Bitcoin and it carries over 10 years, I'm pulling much more money out later on.
Yeah. No, and that's essentially, in a nutshell, what the banks do to your money when you put it in a checking account. They take your dollar, they grow it into 10, and they keep the profits for themselves and for the bigger investors and for those people that own stock in the company, and, kind of go from there. So, third topic, rolling on to the next thing, and a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard this, tulips, all of the different things. Is crypto a bubble? What do you think, Drew?
Crypto is definitely a bubble that pops every few months, and all the people that are not doing their research and that are just jumping in off the hype lose their money. And it cycles. If you watch it, it cycles every 4 months, every 6 months. You'll see a lot of growth that is going out of control. And everybody past this line here, all these people here are going to lose their money because they're jumping on things that they don't understand.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's, one thing we keep preaching on the crypto show is you have to understand what you're investing in, right? So, one of the things that can stop you from, or, when I look at a volatile market like cryptos and Bitcoin, sometimes it can get gut wrenching. Oh my God, my 10,000 just turned into 5,000, just turned into 20,000, just turned into 1,000, right? So I mean, oh my gosh, how do you handle this? So I look at it in the sense of if I understand the cryptos that I've invested in, I believe in their cause, their missions, their coin, yada yada, then I'm not affected by all of the, hypes, volatility. I'm still invested in that project. And, like you said, a lot of people right now, they're just jumping on the coin that's growing at the highest rate. They buy it at the top thinking it's going to the moon instantly, and boom, what happens 2 days later? It drops 50% or whatever the case is, and a lot of people lose their money.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's the fix of this? How do we fix this? I mean, what bubble? We just keep popping? What's up? What do you think?
So here's the thing. Like I said earlier, it's holding about 0.001%. If it goes up to 5%, that it's going to go up over 1,000,000-fold, meaning there is going to be a lot of money gained and lost in this market over the next 5 to 10 years. And depending on who gains it and who loses it, will be the people that come out on top next.
Yeah. Who's gonna be those companies? What do you think? I mean, give me a. I know that's kind of hard to put you on the spot. Obviously, this is all time sensitive. Things change every day. But right now, who do you think the big players? Right.
You don't want to look at it as companies anymore. You want to look at it as networks, because the way that we're going into it looks like we're going to be branding our currency. Some people accept US dollars at a higher value. Some people accept Bitcoin at a higher value. Some people may accept Canadian dollars at a higher value. With these applications, you'll be able to balance your spreadsheet of all the currencies you own globally, and depending on the person you interact with or the organization or company you interact with, they may give you more if you use a certain currency.
I got you. So it's really, and that comes back down to it. A lot of people say Bitcoin, where does the value come from? There's no true value in Bitcoins and blah, blah, blah. And what I personally think about is, intrinsic value of, say, a Van Gogh painting or something that's sold for millions of dollars. You got canvas, wood, paints. You know what I'm saying? You probably got maybe $100 some bucks in true value of products and skills and this and that in a painting like a Van Gogh painting. Yeah, somebody's going to pay millions of dollars for it. Google, shout out number 3. Someone's going to pay millions of dollars for this painting. So where's the true value in this painting? I don't know. So when people are putting their fiat currencies into digital crypto, or
I can tell you where that value's at.
Tell me, where's it at?
All right, so when you have a Van Gogh painting, right, what you're paying for is that painting is unique. Van Gogh had a different approach of painting than anyone else before. So really, you're paying the exclusive price to have something that is very unique.
Because I stroked it this way instead of this way? Different strokes for different folks?
Yeah, it's all in the eye of the beholder. If somebody wants to pay $1 billion for a painting that cost $50 to make, that's up to them. But it's not something I would do.
Yeah, but I guess what kind of puts it in perspective for me, or the reason I look at it is the value is when the person what they're willing to pay. If people value Bitcoin and they value digital currency, as you've seen people are doing right now, and it doesn't look like it's a trend that's going to fall off, it don't matter what you think the intrinsic value of it is, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it. It don't matter what you think.
It matters on the community that uses it.
Yeah. So we are done with those topics. What we want to do, we're going to jump into the 2018 World Economic Forum and let you hear some of this information directly from the people that were, part of this event, because it's great information. It's worth its weight in gold, and we just wanted you to hear it for yourself. So we're going to jump into the 2018 World Economic Forum. Drew, we appreciate you for being a part. I'm sure we'll see you here in a little bit with Sprouts Investments. So let's jump into this World Economic Forum and learn from some pros.
Sorry. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this crypto asset bubble session, which is developed in partnership with Yicai Media Group. As the price of the Bitcoin soared by 13-fold in 2017 with extreme volatility, Bitcoin emerges from the underground world of nerds and criminals to become a mainstream investment today. And from today, there are close to 1,000 different crypto assets on the market, and also the combined market value of the cryptocurrencies surged to 540 billion. And the blockchain technology that underpins it has become impossible for the big financial institutions to ignore. So are these crypto assets finally coming into their own, or are they bubbles, fraud, Ponzi scheme, index of money laundering, or is the seed of the next financial crisis, and maybe even worse? So recently, the central bank have entered the fray with several announcing that they are exploring or experimenting CBDC, which is central banking digital currency with blockchain and also other technologies. And because today technology developers and investors and regulators and central bankers see crypto assets in different ways, and few people can ever be on the same page. So I have a very big ambition today for our session that I hope we can help chart the future path for Bitcoin, crypto assets, ICO, and blockchain technology altogether. And you will be a little bit skeptical for me, but I do have this big ambition because we have a big and we have very good panel today. And so let me introduce them very briefly. To my left, Mr. Neil Rimmer, and he is the general partner and co-founder of the Index Ventures in Switzerland. And next to him, Jennifer Zhu Scott. She is the principal of the Redding Partners in Hong Kong, and also she is a young global leader. And next to her, Professor Robert Schiller, and everyone knows you. He is the Sterling Professor of Economics and in Yale University in the United States. And last but not least, Cecilia Skinsley. She's the Deputy Governor of the Swedish Central Bank, which name is Sveriges Riksbank. Yep. I'm not sure, am I right or not? Close. Yeah, in Sweden.
Very good.
Yeah, welcome so much. Thank you very much. And before we start the debate and dialogue, can I do a very quick poll? Just I learned from the Jenny yesterday. Are you pro or against Bitcoin? Pro?
Can I be halfway?
Can we do pause?
You can. And against? No? Okay.
Well,
and what about you? Are you a pro Bitcoin?
All right.
And how many of you are against Bitcoin? Oh, only a few of you. Great. It's the starting
We
point.
should see, we can do this again in an hour's
Of course.
time.
Yeah, right, exactly what I mean. Exactly, yeah. So my first question is for Professor Schiller. As a Nobel Prize laureate and also the world's best economist on asset bubble and behavioral finance, and you are among the first group of the economists who blame Bitcoin as a big bubble there. And in your view, how do you assess the fundamental value of the Bitcoin? Do you think that the Bitcoin, ETH, and the ripples will replace a large fraction of the conventional money someday?
okay, maybe I can step back and put some historical perspective.
Sure.
There have been repeated proposals to change the currency. Very interesting proposal came in 1879 from Simon Newcomb, the famous astronomer, who was reacting to the instability of the gold standard. And he proposed something called the compensated dollar, which is paper money backed by gold, but the gold content of the dollar is constantly changed by a monetary authority to keep the buying power absolutely constant. Neat idea. It was talked about for a long time. Never happened, okay? Another neat idea. In Chile, in 1967, they introduced a new unit of account called the Unidad de Fomento, again aiming at stability. This Unidad de Fomento is a daily interpolated Chilean consumer price index. There's a website, unidad de something. You can look at it. You can make payments now in that. It's an electronic system, and it had a good foundation. But the funny thing is, it only spread geographically. Mexico has the Unidad de Inversión. There are other Latin American countries. So the spread of these ideas, although they're good ideas, seems to me to have like a geographical or epidemic nature to it. Bitcoin is another really clever idea. I'm impressed with the technology. And it is spreading in certain quarters. There are certain kinds of people who love this. But it doesn't, in my mind, it seems to me it's technology for something else. It's gone viral as a currency. And the blockchain is important, but it's not going to be stable. And so I think, you asked me whether I'm for it or against it. I am for the Unidad de Fomento, and I will argue that every country should adopt what Chile has invented. And maybe we don't do that because we're not in the habit of listening to Chile, or we don't like the story or the sound of how it came about. But there are other ideas. And so I tend to think of Bitcoin as an experiment. It's an interesting experiment. It's not a permanent feature of our lives. We're overemphasizing Bitcoin. We should broaden it out to crypto, toward blockchain, which will have other applications.
But in Chile's case, the underlying technology is different from the technology in the Bitcoin, which is blockchain.
Yeah. It still is digital now. I mean, you
yeah, it is
end up
digital, but still
using
different.
A website to.
Okay.
And it has real value. Let me say, in any other country in the world, there's inflation. You are a renter. You pay a rent which is fixed during the year and change maybe once a year, or then there's a nuisance of changing it. But so that means that the real value of the rent you pay has a jagged sawtooth pattern. Every year it goes down until it suddenly goes up again. That's a dumb idea. Why do we still do it? In Chile, they've got it worked out. You do your rent in UFs, Unidad de Fomento, and it's absolutely stable. Why aren't we imitating that?
Okay, then you haven't answered my question. Do you think that down the road, the Bitcoin will occupy the more and more share of the payment and the money share we have today? And also, Governor, maybe you want to answer this question too.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's big on payments. You agree on that?
I think to define Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency.
But in the first place, do you think it's a currency or it's not a currency?
I think it's a very lousy currency. I don't think it's a payment. It's a very lousy payment. I don't think Bitcoin is disrupting currency or money. Bitcoin is disrupting gold. If you think about what gold as reserve is doing today, Bitcoin can do that and do that better. And I couldn't help.
So you mean it's an asset instead of currency? But
it's
Governor,
value.
do you agree with Professor Schiller?
I represent the conventional issuers of money, which is central banking. Money, if you think about it, I'm not going to go. And I'll do a little bit of history as well. So money is a social convention that mankind has come up with to facilitate a store of value and facilitate a medium of exchange. Otherwise, we would go into barter trading, and that's horribly inefficient.
And also unit
and
of
we
count.
have moved from gold to in Sweden we were poor, so we used copper, and we have evolved into paper notes, and now we have the greater part of conventional money. Fiat money is actually produced by the commercial banks, but it starts with a central bank version of money. But in order for money to be defined as good money, efficient money, it has to be a store of value that is pretty stable, at least in consumption, consumers, from a stable consumer perspective. So inflation, it must be have price stability,
yeah.
And there has to be enough people who are prepared to accept that version of money in a country or in a currency union, etc. So in my view, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and the others, the way I've seen them so far, they don't meet the criteria for be called money. They can be called an asset, fine, but they are not a very good version of money because it's not a very stable store of value. They fluctuate a lot. And it's not a very efficient medium of exchange because you don't buy your groceries with Bitcoin or you don't get your salaries in Bitcoin, and you can certainly not pay your taxes in Bitcoin. There you still have to use the conventional versions of money.
Yeah, but Japan government defined the Bitcoin as a currency.
I've heard about that too, but you still as a taxpayer in Japan have to pay your taxes in yen, and that is the critical factor that creates the great externality effects that makes a money efficient in an economy.
Yeah. So Jennifer, I'm sorry to cut you. And do you agree with the professor? And do you agree with the governor, please?
I disagree.
Which part?
First off, I pick up what Professor said. There are certain type of people, pick up Bitcoin. I can be more specific what type of people. The type of people who are a little bit rebel. A type of people who think, in fact, I'll talk about history. The first central bank was created in Sweden in 1668. And for 350 years, central banks have unchallenged the authority to issue money, and you earn that money, and the money is inflationary. Bitcoin is deflationary. Bitcoin is completely mathematically metered.
Deflation is a problem similar with the gold. So we abandon the gold standard.
So if you use currency, I might agree, but if you use Bitcoin as store of value, why would I earn my hard-earned money through my hard work and next year will worth less? Right? That's what happened with the fiat currency.
Yeah.
But with the Bitcoin, there are only totally in the world that will ever be 21 million Bitcoins. So the value to create more value has to be deflationary. So as a store of value, I think Bitcoin is a very, very efficient, and either people like it or not, it's not going to go away.
But what if there's a collapse of the price of the Bitcoin sometime, maybe this year or next year?
Doesn't matter.
What do we about the storage of the value if you want to keep the value? But maybe, yeah, please.
I mean, currencies have collapsed many times.
Many times,
but they
right.
come back, right? And just so, I mean.
But maybe not Bitcoin, maybe another currency, because the latest news that some kind of rating agency just rating the Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies, and their conclusion is that the Bitcoin is not a good one. But it's still, the price is very, very high.
I would argue that, and first of all, I'm very uncomfortable disagreeing with a Nobel Prize-winning economist on anything. So you can feel free to overrule anything I'll say. But what I would say is that, the reason I'm for this is that I'm an investor in technology and innovation, and I think this is one of the most audacious, generous, and profound inventions that we've witnessed, that certainly I've witnessed in my career. And it does have the ability to help many, many people. Mm-hmm. But we're 9 years into this experiment. And the experiment has gone well at times and more poorly. Right now it looks like it's working. But it has by no means succeeded. And it could fail completely and go to zero and lose people's confidence. But it has accomplished a number of things that I think are remarkable. It's completely trustworthy with no central authority or entity controlling it. A distributed ledger.
It's a strength or a problem? Think about the security
it depends
issue.
Who you are.
Think about the hack issue.
Right. So, it can't solve all problems. I think the problem it really is trying to solve is being exposed to currencies that are moved around at the whim of governments who may or may not know what they're doing or may not have your interests at heart. The people I know, when you talk about people who own Bitcoin, are I know some very, very smart, educated, rational people who grew up in Argentina and witnessed their parents going to the supermarket with shopping bags full of currency and spending it all in one day because they're worried that the next day it would be worth less.
Yeah.
For them, they don't have a lot of faith
Yeah.
in the Argentinian government's ability to defend a currency, maintain its value. And they also like the idea of it being transportable. So when you talk about somebody using an unidad de fermento, what happens if they cross the border? You know, what about refugees? What about people in Iran or in camps in Turkey? So it's a very convenient, reassuring way of storing value. Sure, it's super volatile. It's actually quite inconvenient to use. And there have been many issues with it, related not so much to Bitcoin, but to the exchanges and to the wallets that you have to use, which are kind of hacked together and not particularly convenient. So it's still a hobbyist thing. But as I say, we're only 9 years into this thing, and it's still trusted, and it's still doing what it set out to do, which I find really remarkable.
Yeah, I think Anil and Jennifer raise a very important point, is that the authority and money authority, some monetary authority or all money authorities on this world is not that trustworthy because they issue too much money. Governor, do you agree with them?
So I can't talk for all the central bankers of the world through history. I think there is a point there that in countries, I mean, money is a trust, and if you give out too much of it, you cause inflation, or if you give out too little of it, you cause deflation, and that hurts people. And mankind, as I said before, has been struggling with this for thousands of years. You have agreed about gold. It had an intrinsic value. If it fell apart with inflation, you could always melt it down and start over again. And then for the last 300-400 years, we have used more and more of paper notes. And then we have gone into the digital banking system. And I understand there are countries where you don't trust the public authorities. And you see this as an alternative. I think it's a very poor alternative, to be honest, given that it's too volatile to be used as money. I have no problems if people want to invest in it and use it as an asset. I mean, you can use anything that other people agree has a value, you can do that. But if you're talking about money in an efficient economy over time, it's much better if you have a trustworthy authority that issues enough money, not too little and not too much. And the way it works now in most central banks, and there are exceptions, I agree, is that we don't connect the money, the amount of money we issue and the price we put it to gold, but we have something else. We have the law. The law is the gold of modern central banking, and the laws in most countries now say you should give out money and put the price on money or the interest rate to the extent that you cause price stability, which is roughly 1 to 3%, because you have to allow for relative price changes. That's how it works, and it has worked tremendously well in most countries. But if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. But you also got it wrong. You will get it wrong in the cryptocurrency world as well, if there are too much of us interest holding this versus how much will be issued. So that is the challenge we all have to face when we are in the money business.
I think at this stage we have some consensus that the Bitcoin is more asset instead of a currency.
Yes.
But if it is good asset, shall we regulate it? Professor Schiller.
I was impressed when I visited Lithuania recently. Small talk that I had there with some Bitcoin enthusiasts. Someone said in early 1940s, Lithuania was annexed by the Soviet Union. And they said, do you know what happened to you if you owned a house and you had a portfolio of investments in Lithuania? Well, they probably took it. They defined you as a capitalist tool or something, and they took it. Not only that, but they sent you to Siberia as well. If you had had Bitcoin back then, they couldn't have taken it. That led me to stop and think, really? you know, I don't trust foreign governments taking over, but those things have actually happened in recent history. On the other hand, I think you would have probably lost your Bitcoin too, right? If all those things happened, you would lose your computer and it would be gone. So maybe the whole premise. I don't have the full story of what we're
no, I think you wouldn't lose it if you keep your private key as long as you can access to internet.
You have to memorize it then, or
you can memorize your private key. You can memorize your.
Does anybody do that?
Of course, and people putting their private key into a safe. You know, a lot of people now they use a hardware wallet to keep their crypto assets and keep their private key into a safe. And I think in future, a lot of private banks, one of the services they can provide to their clients is to keep the private key of their digital assets. And I think, in terms of, we keep referring back Bitcoin as a currency or asset. It reminds me, perhaps this conversation 10 years down the road will sound a little bit like when we say, MySpace doesn't really work, therefore internet probably won't work, right? So I think this is, we have to...
So now we have WeChat.
And now we have WeChat, because we have to realize this is an infancy stage of a potentially multi-decade project. And technology right now is not perfect. I don't argue for a second that crypto assets right now are all perfect. But you asking where Bitcoin price gonna be, to me, I have Bitcoin.
Hold on, please. I will ask you later on.
No, I will
go by regulation.
No, I want to. Yes, I will give you my 2 cents on that. But the point I was trying to make is that pricing of Bitcoin. Since the first time I read Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper, I realized pricing of Bitcoin.
Have you met him?
I wish. I was joking this morning. I think President Trump tomorrow probably going to announce that he's Satoshi. Quite possible.
Is he that smart?
He's the smartest guy in the world.
Maybe in a different way.
So back to my point. I think we overemphasize Bitcoin's pricing. I think that's really misleading because the fact that people keep talking of Bitcoin today is below 10,000, it's disaster, or above 10,000, it's crazy. I actually think the fact that Bitcoin's still alive still attracts so much attention. The fact that we're talking about Bitcoin in Davos with Nobel Prize winner, central bank governor, and seasoned investors.
Yeah, I think it's very good. But in your mind,
it means it's a powerful idea.
Right. Yeah. But which is your favorite cryptocurrency? Bitcoin, ETH, or Ripples?
I have them all. I don't have Ripple. I have them all.
Why don't you have Ripple? Because the price is so low?
No, I think one of the spirit of people who came into this space and very early on, I think Neil, we exchanged a little bit about this, is decentralization, right? Satoshi, invented the Bitcoin protocol in that, ashes of 2008 financial crisis when everybody lost their faith in central bank. And so he created this decentralized, peer-to-peer payment. He really intended to be a payment system. Yeah. Invented this peer-to-peer payment system really is to establish some peer-to-peer economy without intervention of central bank.
By the way, do you mean that do you hint that the Bitcoins can self-regulate themselves? There's no need of the regulation at all?
Okay, this is a very good question, right? We keep comparing Bitcoin with US dollar. Let me say this. Behind Bitcoin, there's no Bitcoin central bank. There's no Bitcoin Inc. CEO overpaid, and when it's crashed and ask taxpayers' money to pay it out. Bitcoin behind it, there's no centralized institution behind Bitcoin, borrow 200 billion, debt.
You're right. So just in short, is more trust or less trust?
I think
in the lack of the central bank.
I must protest here. You're saying that people don't trust central banks anymore. Let me get you an example of how at least they trust the central bank and the money in Sweden. The number of transactions in Bitcoin is 1/30 of the number of transactions done by cards, which is a proxy for central bank money through the banking system in Sweden. So it can be an asset. I think we can agree on that. I also think we can agree on that the technology is promising, but it is not a very well spread payment method. So a lot of people, and most transactions in the world are still done with conventional currencies issued by central banks.
What about regulation?
And I understand that there are people who have different views,
Right.
but we still have a very competitive product.
Can I comment on regulation?
Yeah, please. Sorry, regulation, please,
yeah,
first.
So I actually do think it needs to be regulated, because I think
it needs to be
regulated just like anything that I would want to become mainstream needs to be regulated. It needs to exist in society and can't be, there can't be this huge overhang over it that promises to change everything because a regulator decides this is no longer cool. So even, and by the way, this is the same story of any fintech innovation, and the best ones have always done things that were a little bit beyond the boundaries of the current regulatory framework, but they've done it in a responsible way, and they've actually gone and asked the regulator to take a look at what they're doing. The UK, for instance, was, I think, admirable in creating this sandbox to allow them to play and do limited damage if things don't work, assuming that they were trying to do something of value. So it's just so I say so. Basically, I think that there will be object lessons, and I do think this is kind of one of the things I worry about. And I'm actually referring to one of the talks I saw you give, Professor, about narratives. I do believe a government will probably come down very hard on a cryptocurrency and make it a lesson. And what I would love to see is for there to be a role model where somebody actually takes an application and works with a government and does something that corresponds to a certain regulatory framework. But this can only be done in one country at a time. Nobody can regulate all of Bitcoin. You can regulate the use of Bitcoin in your country or in your group of countries, but...
Now, which country in your mind?
I think the most forward-thinking countries should probably do this. So countries...
England?
Perhaps the US, perhaps Sweden.
Yeah, possible. Then back to the regulation. You are very right that we need to regulate the thing that becomes a mainstream investment target. But at the same time, the question is the sandbox will not solve the problem. Who is going to regulate the Bitcoin ICOs, and how to regulate the ICOs and Bitcoins?
Well, there are already regulations in place here. That's important to remember.
Some of them.
So if you see it as an asset, which most countries do, there is investor protection legislation, consumer protection legislation.
You mean the ICO?
There has been some authorities clamping down on platforms.
Yeah, that's about ICO.
And if you use it for illegal transactions, if you're involved in drug dealing, anti-money laundering, financing terrorists, you will be hunted by the authorities, independent of if you pay in dollars or in Bitcoins or in cupcakes or whatever you use.
But the problem is that you cannot regulate Bitcoin today in terms of the money laundering, in terms
No, but
of
it's
the
the
terrorism.
activity that is going to be clamped down, independent of which currency you use.
Yeah, Jennifer.
I think the regulation is really in the past few months even it's quite more and more clear. So you can apart from China, right? China had a hard stop in terms of the.
Do you think China made a mistake?
I think for where China is right now, perhaps China needs to give a hard stop in terms of ICOs, right? But over longer term, we keep hearing that PBOC has been contemplating issuing state-issued blockchain-powered cryptocurrency. So I can see why.
You mean the CBDC? Central bank. You mean the central banking digital currency?
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about that later on.
With that, I think it's actually very valuable for PBOC, right? You can have perfect capital control, right? You can have perfect, taxing tax system to collect the tax, right? But back to the point to, Governor, I actually don't think, central bank, people don't trust the central bank completely anymore. But what I find very, very valuable for the gift from Satoshi to the world is to, for many, many years, we just assumed that money should come from central bank. But because of Bitcoin, because of cryptocurrency, it really provoked a lot of people start to think, what is money? Where money should come from? How much our money should be appreciated or depreciated? I think that kind of debate is healthy.
Yeah, very good. And also a very quick question for Jennifer. Do you have trust in monetary authority in Hong Kong?
I do. I use fiat currency every day, but I also want a part of my portfolio, I want some of my assets has zero correlation to central bank policy,
So,
and which is cryptocurrencies providing
so it's
right now.
Investment portfolio kind of thinking.
Diversification.
Yeah,
but
understand.
also, I think, in terms of tokens, right now you can issue security token or utility token. Utility token pretty much, apart from China, is hard stop, but pretty much every country is self-regulate. If you issue security token, pretty much every country will either have existing security laws to govern your security token, or their central bank has issued very clear, indication in terms of how you regulate security token.
Right.
Professor, please.
Relating to regulation, I was recently involved in discussion with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange about creating a futures market. Now, regulators had to approve the futures market in Bitcoin. And I think that was only last month that happened. I initially opposed the idea. I'm not quite to your level of enthusiasm.
I think the media maybe misrepresented you a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes
Please,
that happens.
Go ahead.
But the thing is that what struck me about this is that while it was possible to short Bitcoin via some of the exchanges, it has been difficult to short. And financial theory says if something is not shortable, then it can be taken over by enthusiasts. And the doubters no longer have an adequate way of betting against it. So we've just seen both the CBOE and the CME have both created futures markets for Bitcoin. And that might make it more stable. Now, in fact, when people ask me, should I invest in Bitcoin, I have a follow-up question. Long or short, what are you thinking of? And I can't really know with certainty
what
which
is your
is the
view,
right
long
one.
or short, at this moment?
Hold.
I would say long, but not more than you can afford to lose completely, because it's an experiment, and we want the experiment to succeed. But one sure way of making it fail is if too many people lose their life savings, then it will go to zero because they'll sell the rest.
Yeah, and also hold for your.
Hold,
Yeah,
but at the
understand.
same time, also think, let's be honest, right? Right now, there are about more than 1,000 cryptocurrencies available in the market right now. I would say 1995, perhaps even a higher number of those cryptocurrencies would not be around in 3 years' time, because a lot of those companies took this window of opportunities, issued their token with a very simple business idea and put into a white paper. So essentially, they are using seed stage, VC, angel stage business proposal to seek IPO level of fundraising. And I think that's not going to end well. And another thing is I have to give some feedback to media. I think media right now...
Very briefly, please.
I think media right now overly focus on the pricing and not paying...
Actually, we are not. You mentioned the central bank digital currency. We have just published an article from the deputy governor of the PBOC, and he declared that the forward thinking of the CBDC plan in China by the PBOC. And you talk about the blockchain technology.
Right.
But according to the plan from the PBOC, they said that maybe we are not going to use the blockchain as the as the technology for the CBDC in their plan. So, Governor, you also have an e-corona plan. So, what kind of technology are you going to utilize?
I'll talk a little bit about that. So, it has a different, completely starting point, the research project we run at the Riksbank. And the starting point we have is that technologically and legally, it become very easy in Sweden to live completely cashless. And there's no legal obligation for banks or for shops to take notes and coins. and it's very easy to use cards and instant payment apps. So we see a rapid decrease in the value of circulation in notes and coins. And as a central bank, we are sort of neutral about this. We think that people should be able to use the payment methods that they find safe and efficient, as long as they're safe and efficient. However, going from a non-cash society into a potential non-cash society, where notes and coins are no longer useful as a store of value, well, it can still be a store of value, but not as a medium of exchange, is a new society. And it opens up a number of intricate questions, such as, can we still say as a central bank that we provide a safe and efficient payment system? Is it accessible for everybody? Because in reality, it means that everybody has to be a part of the commercial banking system. And not everybody wants to be a part of the commercial banking system or are not even allowed into it. So that is the starting point. We have to look at the consequences of a cashless society. Is it still safe and efficient if we go in there? And if we find that there is a need for a public sector digital version, we are looking into what sort of features that would have. And that is what we call potentially an e-krona. And it's far away into the future. It's not something that we are doing near. And no, we don't know if we're going to use blockchain or any other technology. But it would work as a one-to-one exchange rate versus the krona that we have, which is the national currency, and it would potentially work as a complement to the notes and coins that we provide, so that people also in the future will be able to choose whether they want to have a claim on the commercial bank, having the deposits there, or if they want to have a claim on the central bank. They can have it now with the notes, but potentially they can also have it in the future.
Governor, very quickly, do you think the CBDC in Sweden will be M1, M2, or M0? I'm sorry, too academic.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So that would be a digital version of cash. So the answer is it would be M0.
Zero.
The nearest version of money.
And also, do you think it should be retailing or wholesaling? Means, shall we need banking sector or we don't need them anymore?
So the reason for why we're starting this project was that we see that individuals are stop using cash, or the banks and shops stops accepting and offer cash services. So if there is a need, it would be offered to individuals primarily.
I see. Then will it be anonymous or not?
So that is one of the questions that where the staff is looking into. My personal view is that it's perhaps not the core business of the public sector to facilitate illegal transactions. So at the end of the day, it would probably be necessary be able to look into transactions in an e-krona for criminal investigation reasons. But it's a political issue, and we leave that to the legislators to look into potentially.
When will we see the CBDC in Sweden?
I don't know. It's a long way to go, I think. Okay. But we have to do the homework, since cash is going out of fashion very quickly.
Right. Jennifer, your view on the CBDC?
I think, it's in fact, I don't think, completely outside of central bank system, a very efficient payment system will really exist, because I don't think any country, any sovereign country, any central bank will allow there's none other alternative currency completely outside of central bank's oversight. However, I do think that we haven't mentioned the term token economy, right? We focus on, if cryptocurrencies is going to replace money or not, but or if it's a store of value or not. However, I think if you look a little bit beyond of the manic happening in the cryptocurrency.
You mean the technology?
I think the technology now create this kind of very effective, a very efficient micro-incentive system that will potentially disrupt venture capital. We are in fact disrupting ourselves, and potentially will disrupt the IPO market, right? And I think financial market, I have been invested in fintech for a number of years, and over the years I have seen many companies that always building on the same system, just incrementally make it a little bit more efficient, a little bit more transparent. But with blockchain, the underlying technology is
by the way,
time.
let me ask you a very specific question. Do you think the blockchain technology can replace the RTGS system in the banking sector we are using today for the payment system?
I think the scalability is not there yet.
Okay.
But over time, give it time, right? This is infancy stage.
How long?
It's hard to say. That the acceleration is happening very fast. So I think the breakthrough could happen anytime.
Yeah. Neil, please.
Yeah, no, so a couple of things to comment on. I mean, the first is, you know, tokens and their use in delivering other functions than just transactions or store of value, which is the primary function of the Bitcoin blockchain. I do think that's interesting. And so if you think of notaries or, you know, or title insurance, you know, things that require some sort of a stamp and a lot of bureaucracy, it's possible to, it's quite conceivable to think of a blockchain with a token that's used to verify those transactions and to store them forever in an inviolable way. But that's still, you know, I think it's a bit easy to sort of say that the blockchain will generate lots of things and we're not so sure about Bitcoin. The truth is you need one with the other because you need this way of giving people incentives to do all the work to verify this distributed database. I mean, 2 people running 2 computers is not as trustworthy as thousands of people doing this, right? So I think you can't sort of buy into it, but not completely buy into it. You do have to buy into the idea that these things will be valuable. Now, what does that do to venture capital and, you know, and our business of investing in the equity of startups and helping them grow their business? I think that, as it's been pointed out, there's a lot of volatility and there's a gold rush. And lots of people just think, why wouldn't I buy Bitcoin? It only goes one way. And that clearly cannot last, and that will not last. And so that's attracted lots of people into the market and lots of, I think, unethical offerings of tokens. And those things will hopefully be regulated out of business or just shut down. But that doesn't, but just, so on the other hand, I don't think that every business can fund itself by monetizing some unit of exchange in their future business by selling tokens and not by selling equity. You know, if you think of something like Kickstarter, I think of Kickstarter as kind of a proto ICO in the sense that, you know, Kickstarter, the site where you can show some product and sell it. You make a nice video that describes the product, hopefully something that you will actually make. Yeah. And people will give you orders, actually give you the money, buy it beforehand, and you're funding your business without selling equity. Yeah.
So before we open the floor, let me ask Neil and Jennifer very quickly one question about ICO. Why China government shut down all the Bitcoin exchanges and all the ICO? Because according to one survey in China, 90% of the ICO scheme is a cheating scheme and cheating case. So that's the reason why the China government moves very quickly to stop everything. But how is the situation in the other places, in your view? ICOs?
I don't think China has a monopoly on that. I think there are a lot of people who are taking advantage of this gold rush and the fact that and the people are not doing their homework and just buying things without asking themselves what's going on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the whole thing will come crashing down.
Jennifer?
I think, you know, first of all, you don't need ICO to tokenize. Tokenization doesn't really require ICO. ICO is a marketing process, right? Secondly, I think there's a ripple effect in terms of central bank's action and the regulators' action. Because in the past probably 7-8 months, I have spoken to governments from Oman to Switzerland. Last week, I just met Switzerland's federal council, who's in charge of economy. And after the meeting with a group of us, was, he actually announced that he wants to make Switzerland a crypto nation.
Yeah.
In Asia, Cambodia, Bangladesh, etc., a lot of smaller economy now, they started to think, if we just make our regulation a little bit more crypto friendly, perhaps we can attract a lot of capital and a lot of talent. And either you like it or not, I think we are really at the cusp of something quite extraordinary happening in terms of monetary reset. In the history, every time there was a big disruptive technology taking over, what followed with that is always a monetary reset from railway to internet. But now with the information technology, we've already at the end of probably 25 years.
Yeah.
If you think about how seamless everything else using technology, and then you think about our financial system, there is a mismatch. So who's there to say things not going to be completely different, right?
Yeah.
And I think, in the 90s, when people, talking with early investors going to internet, they always say, oh, intranet will probably, take off, but internet, you can't imagine people.
Sometimes we need bubbles to nurture the new technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it strikes me that what bothers me about Bitcoin is that the enthusiasm I see is like a speculative bubble. It's about somebody made a lot of money, and I wish I could get in on that too. And it looks selfish to me. There are other financial innovations that are exciting that I don't hear all. To me, they're exciting. For example, the benefit corporation is an idea that's spreading. It's a kind of corporation which is halfway between for-profit and non-profit. Mm-hmm. It's a for-profit corporation that has in its charter a public purpose. So here we're living in a world where we're getting rising inequality, we're getting nationalist separation of, and Bitcoin seems to fit in too much with that. I wish people were less enthusiastic about making money.
It's not about making money.
Actually,
well, I know it's not.
I think you must have consensus that technology should do the good for the whole human being. I think that it's too philosophical, so it's time for us to open the floor for questions. We collect all the questions. We collect all the questions, and we will ask panelists to answer them together. Please, the gentleman, please identify who you are, and please be very brief.
My name is George Basheshvili. I'm a private equity fund manager and crypto investor as well. So my question is to Ms. Skinsley. So for example, you issue a crypto cron, right? Mm-hmm. And it will mean that people will be able to keep these crons at their own wallets. So the need for custodianship, like what the banks are doing, will diminish. It means that a lot of cash will go out of the banking system, which they will not be able to use. So what macro effect do you think it will have on the whole banking system, and how will it change it?
Yeah, very good questions. And please, yeah. Please, we collect all the questions.
Thank you. Great discussion. I'm a journalist, but I'm asking as an interested individual. You said crypto nation. I like that. If you could start again from scratch tomorrow with a failed state or some country X, would you make it a crypto nation?
Good question.
Do you, which panelists do you want them to respond to you? Okay, all of them. Great. Yeah, we collect all the questions, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Winston Ma from CIC, China Investment Corporation. And a question to Professor. Since Professor, you gave CIC a speech, right, a few months ago. And focus was more on behavior finance. I was very curious. You haven't touched on it. Maybe take the chance from your behavior finance perspective to comment on this.
Because of limited time, please be brief. Please. Yeah, please. Thank you, please.
Hi, I'm a journalist from Holland. One issue that has not been discussed is Bitcoin's energy use, which seems to be hanging over the whole crypto world as a dark cloud, rising up to levels of maybe entire countries. I'm especially interested in the Bitcoin fans' perspective on that.
Yeah, Li Wei.
Li Wei from Caixin. I want to build on Professor Schiller's point to challenge.
You have no time to build.
Yeah.
You only have time to ask questions.
So for yourself, if Bitcoin enthusiasts view this as an asset, it's okay. But if given nowadays inequality, the need to do money laundering, and people's distrust of the government, everyone will just pile in. Say China crack this down, these people will go to South Korea or Japan. And then when there is an eventual, if central bank do not act, there is an eventual crack kind of fall. And then all the people, Korean, have go on the street to protest. So I'm just wondering, this is not a steady state. Central bank have to go in before kind of this become a systematic risk.
You mean the CBDC or the regulation?
Regulation, but CBDC can help.
Do you have questions? A comment, good, very good, thank you.
So just challenge the view of the...
Okay, and Ali?
Thank you. With Ita Media Group, my question for Ms. Governor is that, do you think it is possible or necessary or feasible for us to do some global coordination in terms of regulating Bitcoin or the crypto asset? And very short, another question is that, do you think a next financial crisis may be caused by crypto asset, because a lot of investment bank like Goldman Sachs are now testing waters to provide brokerage service in terms of Bitcoin futures? Thank you.
Very good questions. And I see there's a hands from the gentleman. Yeah, oh, the lady, please.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer from ScanTrust. This question is actually for Neil. We talked a lot about Bitcoin, but we didn't get a chance to talk about other cryptocurrencies. And as you know, a lot of startups are now raising money, and it's disrupting your venture capital model. So I'm curious to hear whether or not you're going to start investing into the ICOs. How do you feel about that? And what is your strategy going forward?
Yeah, the lady here, please. Yeah, you.
Hi, I'm a crypto newbie, but one of the things my understanding is that the technology protocol behind Bitcoin isn't particularly scalable. And so if the underlying protocol isn't scalable, how do you expect it to sort of do something like become gold or, replace the reserve currency?
Yeah, very good question. And the final one, yeah, final two from the gentleman there.
Hi, I'm from Geneva, Al-Kazan. I was just wondering, the Bitcoin is based on what value? How is it just the demand that makes the price of the Bitcoin? What is the value? How do you scale the value of the Bitcoin?
Okay, thank you. The final one.
Jeremy Warner, another journalist. It's not part of the problem with Bitcoin as a currency that it can't expand beyond a certain point, and therefore it can't really accommodate economic growth properly, and a bit like when currencies were linked to the gold standard, it would then become deflation.
I think we have solved that problem. You arrived late, I guess. Anyway, I think we have 8 or 9 questions. So every one of you can pick the questions you like and comment on that. Maybe Neil from you.
Okay, so I'll comment first on the crypto nation. If you're a failed state, what have you got to lose? I don't see why you could actually do. So I don't think you'd print paper currency. You might do a central bank controlled digital currency, or you could do something that was distributed in terms of control, and you might attract a lot of business and citizens. So I would definitely try that. The other comment, the other one I wanted to comment on was the question about whether this disrupts the venture capital model. I don't think it does as dramatically as you might think. I think that there are still, and I think there will be for quite a while, entrepreneurs who want to sell equity and work with somebody who's aligned with them in the same security to build a company and to share the gain. That doesn't mean that company might not at some point issue tokens, but it doesn't mean that they'll use them as their primary way of raising capital. On the other hand, there are some ICOs that we think could make sense, and we are looking at those carefully.
And also technology, the scalability issue.
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of reminds me of what people used to say about the internet and about the early days of Ethernet or TCP/IP, that it will never scale.
But shall we wait decades?
Other things. I think we'll get there. I think that these things, you know, entrepreneurs are very resourceful, engineers are very resourceful, and it will scale, or we will come up with versions of it that will scale better. But you're right, it's not particularly fast, it's not particularly cheap, and it consumes a lot of energy.
Jennifer?
I'll try to use one sentence to answer every question. Crypto Nation, definitely, because of trust leap. We didn't used to trust a paper note, but now we trust paper note. Now a lot of next generation are digital native, so why would you still go back to build paper money? In terms of energy use, I totally agree. I think Bitcoin is not efficient at all, but again, depends on what you benchmark against, right? If Bitcoin is disrupting gold compared to gold mining and gold security, and money spent on gold security and transportation, Bitcoin is not that bad. In terms of money laundering, let me answer this question with a question. Before Bitcoin, what did we use for money laundering? So Bitcoin is just a tool. It's not the reason there's money laundering. In terms of global coordination of regulation, I'll leave to the governor to have final say, but I think from my own experience, I think each government, each central bank has its own priority. It will be very hard to achieve a global coordination.
I agree.
In terms of scalability versus being a very effective store of value, scalability is measured by number of transactions per minute. So if you use Bitcoin as payment, the number of transactions per minute matters, right? If you look at Visa, Master. But if you use a store of value, you're not going to trading all the time. So because it's disrupting gold and
so it's not currency.
It's not currency. In terms of Bitcoin, the value, I think a lot of people argue that there's no underlying value. But if Bitcoin can replace even 5% or 10% as a store of value compared to the global gold reserve, you can do the math that Bitcoin right now is still very undervalued.
So it's adjusted from a belief. The value is from people's
same as
belief.
Gold. Gold price is based on
gold
how
has
we
value.
consensusly.
Yeah. Professor, you have more.
Yeah, someone asked for a behavioral finance perspective. So I come back to the idea that Bitcoin is an interesting idea, but it's way overrepresented in our attention because it's like a speculative bubble, that it involves contagious stories about people making a lot of money. And that you don't like this, but let me go on.
It's not about money.
There are other innovations, there are other things to think about.
I will arrange another event for you to debate for the whole day on that. Yeah. But before that, Professor, would you like to answer the question from will Bitcoin nurture next financial crisis?
Well, that's the thing about central banks have been perfecting their art for how many years in Sweden?
350 in the Swedish case, but most of the 150.
And I congratulate you. They now think that they have a target inflation rate, and they're pretty much hitting the target. Bitcoin, you said, will be deflationary, maybe massively deflationary. I don't have a good feeling about what that will mean for the economy. It seems like it'll be very disruptive to the economy, and we've got a good thing going with you people.
We do our best. Over to me then, and the question from the lady, regulating globally or nationally, I think it's mainly taken care of. It is taken care of on a national basis through investment protector legislation, anti-money laundering protection, etc. Globally, it remains to be seen whether it's going to be regulated or not. Is it a source of new financial crisis? I may have to regret this for the rest of my life, but I think no. I don't think this, as we can see it now, to be a source of the next financial crisis, because the sizes and the level of leverage is probably, and it's not within the banking system as we can see it. That probability is pretty low. The consequences from a macroeconomic perspective of keeping central bank digital currency in the wallet next to your notes and coins, next to your debit card where you keep your commercial bank money, it's a very difficult question. There are different research going into different directions. They open up a variety of tricky issues. Let me just finalize by saying that safe and efficient versions of money that are being offered in ways that society needs in order to facilitate transactions in a safe and efficient way, that is very beneficial for the economy. I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you, Governor. I think we have run out of time, but still I would like to take the privilege of the moderator to ask you very quickly two final questions. The first one is that in 1 year's time, how would you predict the average price level of the Bitcoin? And the second, in 10 years' time, do you think which currency will become the next great global currency? Central banking digital currency of the dollar, CBDC of the euro, CBDC of the RMB, or Bitcoin? Maybe from Governor first.
So as a decision maker in interest rates, I have to make a number of forecasts. Luckily, Bitcoin is not one of them that affects my world as a decision maker. So I will not give you any forecast of what Bitcoin will be. On the question of in 10 years' time, which currency will become the next big global currency, I don't think it will be Bitcoin in terms of sizes and in terms of how well it is sort of used in the economy. And I think it remains truly a very open question whether any central bank have issued a digital version of their own currency addressed to individuals. It's a very open question, but a lot of us, including the Riksbank, are looking into it.
Professor, very quickly.
I'm glad you set the example for not answering your question. I've discovered that when I give flippant forecasts, they get quoted.
Okay, then the global currency in 10 years' time.
Okay, maybe I can guess this, because it's not as dangerous. I'll say the euro.
Euro.
Yeah.
CBDC euro.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Jennifer?
Back to, I don't like the point about it's about money.
It's okay, Jennifer. We still have time.
No, I want to say this. I actually don't care about where Bitcoin's price is going to be, because the fact that Bitcoin has been survived for so long, it means it's a very powerful idea. I really don't care where it's going to be. And I think
so. You will hold.
I will hold.
Yeah.
I will hold not really, primarily for the profit. I will hold for the idea.
I see.
Secondly,
for the belief.
For the belief. Secondly, I think, for the belief and also for the idea, that could inspire a lot of different possibilities and imaginations in our new monetary system.
And in 10 years' time?
In 10 years' time, I still think that, I don't think, crypto currency completely outside of the central bank system will really flourish in the global.
Is it Bitcoin or anything else?
No, I think it potentially could be Chinese central bank issued national cryptocurrency that mobilized the trade on One Belt, One Road. That could be very powerful.
Yeah, Neil.
So none of them answered the question, but I have to answer the question.
I'm happy to that.
Great. I'll take the heat for the flippant forecast. I would say that I think.
But very briefly.
Very briefly.
Yeah.
I don't know, 25,000 a year from now. Please don't write it down. But I would also agree that as long as it's alive and higher than it is today, I think it's a success. I don't care if it's
absolutely.
But to your other question, I think it'll be a digital currency, and your bet is as good as mine. Nobody said the dollar, so why don't we say the digital dollar?
Yeah, thank you so much. Final poll for you: how many of you are against Bitcoin now? Fewer. And how many of you are pro Bitcoin now? Also fewer.
Yes.
Strange. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for our
Some great knowledge there from the 2018 World Economic Forum. We appreciate you for being a part of this and listening to our thoughts on what they're talking about here in the 2018 World Economic Forum, because we are excited here at IMR for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies Sprouts Investments is excited for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and we're looking forward to what it brings for the future there. So we hope you enjoyed this recap in this video. Go to YouTube, IMR Productions, subscribe to that YouTube channel. We'll be putting out crypto videos just like this so you can stay up to date to crypto. Also, Infinite Media Resources, search that there on YouTube, and you can find us on there so you can stay up to date. On Facebook, like the Sprouts Investments Facebook page. We have a private group as well as a public group, so make sure you go like those pages if you want to stay up to date as well. So like, comment, and share in this video if you liked what we talked about, some great information. We'll see you on the next crypto show.